In this video, we're going to be graphing exponential functions. Since we've never done this before, this is just the basics. So we need to first figure out what an exponential function is. If you look at my first example, y equals 4 times 1/3 to the x power, we're raising some number to the x power. That's what makes it an exponential function. If you're not raising something to a variable power, you do not have an exponential function. The way to graph these, at least for right now, is to select some x values, calculate our y values, and then plot the resulting points. I like to take things kind of easy at first, so I'm going to start with 0. That gives me 4 times 1/3 to the 0 power. Anything raised to the 0 power is 1, so we have 4 times 1, which is 4. I'm going to look at 1. Okay, so 0, 4 is our first point. If my x value is 1, we have 4 times 1/3 to the first power. 1/3 to the first power is 1/3. 1/3 times 4 is 4/3. So that gives me a point that is just between 1 and 2 on the y-axis. Let's look at x equals 2. So I've got 4 times 1/3 to the second power. So that's 1/3 to the second power is 1/9. So 4/9 is my y value. That's about a half. Hopefully you can see kind of where we're going now. If I choose x equals 3, we have 4 times 1/3 to the third power, which is 4/27. And now we're getting really close to that x-axis. You can see how it's decreasing. I do want to go one more the other way, one more to the left. So let's see what happens when x equals -1. 4 times 1/3 to the negative first power. The negative powers means flip the fraction. So we're left with 4 times 3, which is 12. So on the other end, on the left side, we have -1, 12. If we follow our curve, you can kind of see where we're going. Okay, and it does go off in both directions for infinity. But you can see as we get lower, as we get further into the positive x's, we're getting closer and closer to that x-axis. Whenever we have a curve that never really touches a line but just really approaches it, that has a special name. That line is called an asymptote. In this case, we have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. If you look specifically at the curve, you can see we have a decreasing curve. Whenever we have a decreasing curve, that is exponential decay. Decay because we have a decreasing graph, decreasing values. Okay, so exponential decay, we have a decreasing graph. For the second example that I have, y equals 3 times 4 to the x power. Again, we have that x power, so we know we have some sort of exponential function. I'm going to do the same thing. Choose some x values, substitute them in, and calculate a y value, and then graph those points. Again, I like to start small, and 0 is a nice round number. So 3 times 4 raised to the 0 power. Anything raised to the 0 power is 1. So 3 times 1 is 3. So 0, 3 is my first point that I'm going to plot. If x equals 1, we have 3 times 4 to the first power. So that's 3 times 4, which is 12. So 1, 12 is also a point on that curve. If I choose x equals 2, we have 3 times 4 squared. 4 squared is 16. And 3 times 16 gives us 48, and that's well off our graph. We need something to go in the other direction now. So let's do -1. 3 times 4 to the negative first power. Remember that negative power is going to invert our number. So instead of 4 over 1, it's going to give us 1 over 4. So 3/4. So -1, 3/4 goes about there. For -2, we have 3 times 4 to the negative second power is 3 times 1 over 16, or 3/16. So -2, 3/16. And you can kind of see what direction we're going in. And if I draw my curve, you can kind of see that this is kind of opposite of the first example. Because everything is increasing from left to right, we say that this is exponential growth. So when we have an increasing graph, we have exponential growth. We also still have a horizontal asymptote in this case. Our horizontal asymptote, again, is the x-axis, or y equals 0. So that's our asymptote. I hope this kind of gave you some insight into how to graph exponential functions and what they look like in general. We'll be doing some more where we're moving them up and down the y-axis as well, and probably left to right in the coordinate plane too. So stay tuned for those things.